Well, hello, this is Jack Sheffield, Jack the exam guy. We're going to be talking about the marine construction exams. This video is going to be an overview where I'm going to talk about the different exams themselves, the different license categories, the manuals that you're going to need, and the actual exams themselves. Very interestingly, they have divided the marine construction category up into 5 separate divisions. Okay, so we have 5 separate licenses. Okay, I'm going to attempt to explain this, and I think that and what the rationale is for that. Okay, so the exams are open book, so it is imperative that you do obtain the manuals. However, the most current manuals are not required. Okay, so if you are trying to save money, you may be able to find used manuals. You can go on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, that kind of stuff, and you might be able to find some used manuals. You do not always have to have the current manuals because this information just doesn't change that much. Okay. The first step to answering a lookup question is knowing which manuals to use. Okay. This overview will go a long way to ensuring your success and understanding that. But this presentation is just an overview. There will be a detailed section on most of the manuals. Okay. I'm going to go page by page on many of these manuals and tell you exactly what you need. Also in this, in my course, I'm going to have a lot of information on there that's not in the manuals. Okay, there is information on this exam that's not in any of these manuals. I'll give you an example. So one question that you might be asked is about the channel markers in the intercoastal waterway. Okay, are the red ones on which side are the red markers and which side are the green markers? Now we all know, I know you say, I heard you say it, you said red right return, right? Well, that's great for when you're coming up the river, but what if you're going down the intercoastal? Which way are you going on a return when you're going on the intercoastal? It could be either way. Well, guess what? The green markers are on the ocean side and the red markers are on the land side. Okay, so just remember the ocean is green or blue, and that's the side. Okay, so that's just one question that you might get, and I would say you might want to try to commit that to memory. It's a good thing to know anyway. All right, so let's go to this next slide. Okay, now this is word for word from the state website. I was very interested in all of the changes that have been made over the last year or so. And so I pulled this up, been doing some research for you, so you don't have to. And this is directly off the DBPR website. Okay, so let's talk about what a marine specialty contractor is. This is probably what 95 to 98% of you are going to want to do is the marine specialty contractor. And that, by the way, I was a marine contractor, so I have a little bit of insight into exactly what you do and how this is and how to help you pass this exam. So you can do fixed docks, floating docks, boathouses, mooring devices, mooring fields, seawalls, bulkheads, piers, wharfs, boat lifts, boat ramps, revetments, cofferdams, wave attenuators, all right, dune crossovers, and other marine constructions and activities, including the pile driving, the framing, the concrete, the masonry, the dredge and fill, wood shingle and wood shakes, or asphalt fiberglass shingles on roofing on new structures of your own construction. So you can only do the roofing. That's one thing. That this is kind of new and this is kind of interesting. We do a lot of metal roofs in marine construction. Technically, you're going to have to subcontract those now to a roofing contractor. So you might want to think about getting your roofing license. If you've been in the marine construction business for a while, you have probably done metal roofs. You've probably done asphalt, obviously. You might have even done some built up. You might have done some clay tile roofs and so on and so forth. All of these things that you've been doing may apply towards your experience in getting a roofing license. So I would think about getting a roofing license. And the chances of anybody ever catching you doing this, is probably pretty slim. But if you've got some competitors out there, or maybe they could call on you, or maybe you're calling on them at this point, right? If they're doing metal roofs, it appears to me they're not supposed to be doing that. They're supposed to be subbing that out to a roofing contractor. Okay, So marine specialty, that covers a lot. It covers just about everything that, most of our dock builders are going to be doing, and that's marine specialty. Now, there's something called a marine seawall work contract. Now, this is the one that confuses me the most because it says you can replace supporting members of piers and docks, for instance, piles or pilings, columns, posts, or stanchions. That's all you can do as a seawall contractor? I don't get it. I just don't get it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Um, the next one is a marine bulkhead work contractor. All right. Now, this one does make sense. You can do bulkheads and its supporting members. That's all you can do is just the bulkheads. Now, why would they have, and why would you only want to get a bulkhead contractor? Why wouldn't you just get the marine specialty? Well, that's a good question. I guess the reason this is my this is my educated guess, is let's say you've only done bulkheads. Well, guess what? When you do your application and they're asking you, what have you been doing? What is your qualifications? And you haven't done any dock work, you haven't actually, set any pilings off of a barge or, or built a dock. Well, guess what? You don't qualify as a marine specialty contractor. Maybe you would only qualify in your experience as a marine bulkhead work contractor. There you go. Same thing with marine dock. Marine dock is only docks, piers, decks of a marine nature. And you can do the pile driving, okay, to build a dock, but that's all you get. You can only do docks, piers, and decks. Can't build any bulkheads and so on and so forth. So that's an interesting, twist. And once again, I think it might be, but just because maybe somebody hadn't built a bulkhead, they only build docks, they're only interested in building docks, and they can't qualify as a marine specialty because they haven't done these other things. Okay. And then we have marine pile driving. Well, this is pretty, self-explanatory. They can drive concrete, wood, or steel piles in a marine environment. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. Most of this makes sense. This pile driving, yeah, you're just driving piles. Marine dock, you're just doing dock. You're only qualified to do docks. Bulkhead, you're just doing bulkheads. This marine seawall, this is the one that doesn't make sense to me. I just don't understand. It says replace supporting members of piers and docks, piles, columns, and stanchion. Nothing else about, nothing else about building seawalls. It just doesn't make sense. But anyway, marine specialty, that's probably the one that you're going to be applying for, except in those other circumstances that I talked about. So here's a little bit of a breakdown of the exams and the books, just a brief overview of the exams. Okay, so the number of questions and how long. So the specialty is going to be 80 questions in 5 hours. That's going to be what most people do. And that's going to be about 20 questions an hour. So that's the pace you need to be on. We'll talk about that another time. Now, the bulkhead, only 40 questions in 2 hours. Dock worker, 40 questions in 2 hours. Pile driver, all the rest of them, 40 questions in 2 hours. Now, the interesting thing, also, what I want to mention is everybody has to pass the business portion as well. Okay, the business portion is a totally different deal. I do encourage you to look at my introduction video on the business exam also. Everybody has to take the business exam and this trade exam here. Okay, so the Walker's estimating book, everybody's got to have the Walker's estimating book. Everybody's got to have the OSHA book. Everybody has to have the contractor's manual. I'm going to talk about these in a detail in a minute. Okay. Now, this design and control of concrete mixtures, only the pile driving person does not need to do design and control of concrete mixtures. Now, I don't really get that because, hey, they can drive concrete piles. You would think that they would need to know about concrete mixtures, but they don't. But they don't need the manual anyway, or they don't need to do rebar. Well, I know there's going to be rebar in those piles, but there you go. They don't need it. Everybody needs to do principles. Everybody needs to have the principles and practices of marine construction. Everybody has to have the 811 prevention guide. This is the underground locate. Everybody has to know the dock manual. Everybody has to know the timber pile manual. Okay. Now we're gonna get into those manuals that only some people need. Florida Building Code building is just for the specialty, the dock worker, and the seawall. The accessibility, Florida Building Code accessibility is just for the specialty and the dock worker. And the dock worker has to have Florida Building Code residential and the Army State, Department of Army State General Permit and Florida Statute 403, 813, 2023. And then the seawall people license is responsible to have this boater's guide to federal requirements for recreational boats. Now, these are this is interesting to me because I would think that this permit, everybody, especially the specialty and the bulkhead, everybody should have this, understand this, this general permit. Um, there's some interesting things in this general permit that we'll talk about another time that I think that were kind of surprising to me. At least one thing was the Florida statute. Okay, this is the exceptions, by the way. This Florida statute 813, this is supposed to be 2023, is the exceptions to needing a permit. Okay, so the 1,000 square foot rule for most waters, 500 square foot rule for the outstanding waters, and there's some other things in there about how high the dock has to be, and what have you, in both of these right here. So these are two important things that I think everybody should know, but you're not required to have it for the exam. But I would look over those anyway, because there's some general information here that there might be on the exam. And then this boater's guide to the federal requirements for recreational boats. Well, this the only person that needs it is the seawall. That makes no sense to me at all. Actually, I would think that everybody, the specialty and the dock worker should have this guide. Now, this is for recreational boats. You would think that there would be some type of a guide for commercial boats, but this is for recreational boats. I got to tell you, a lot of times you're building docks for people that have been working really, really hard all their lives, and they've made some money and they got a piece of waterfront property and they've got to have a dock, but they haven't spent a lot of time on boats. I think that would be a great thing to have these printed up and give them to your customers, because a lot of people, if it's been my experience, some of my customers, hey, they're boat people and they're always out on their boat. Some of my customers, hey, they just have not been out on the boat very much. They've just hit the, the brass ring in life, and they now they're going to get their first boat, and they don't know a thing about them. So it would be a good chance for you to get some brownie points and give them that guide. So anyway, that's a little bit about just a quick overview of the manuals and the exam. Okay, so let's start with the Walker's Building Estimators Reference Book. This happens to be the 33rd edition, but once again, it doesn't really matter which edition you have. You can go back at least to the 31st. All this information is really the same. Okay, so it'll just be on different page numbers, from what I'll be talking about in my videos. All right, so this is an estimator's book. Okay, how much material are you going to need? How long is it going to take? How many man hours, so on and so forth. What's it going to cost? And what these are all types of estimating questions. When you get questions like that, you're going to think about the walkers. And there also is some other good general information about how to build stuff, cranes and pile drivers and stuff like that. So, and I'll go over all that individually when we get to that walker's book. The OSHA book, obviously, that's pretty self-explanatory. That is a book of safety rules. Okay, there's a section, a marine construction section, where they talk about how many feet of line you need to have on your throw buoy. You have to have a life-saving skiff. You have to have, your life jackets and how often you have to inspect them and so on and so forth. But there's also some general information about, do you need, how many portalets do you need on a job based on, how many employees you have out there. There's stuff about, scaffolding. You might need scaffolding safety, ladder safety, all these types of things that you're going to need to know. That's your OSHA manual. Your contractor's manual. Now, hopefully, you've done you've done the business and finance already, and you're familiar with the Florida Contractors Manual. there's going to be things in there that they can ask you from the Florida Contractors Manual. Probably Chapter 7, which is your safety chapter. Okay, rope and rigging. I would imagine those are going to be important for you. And then also labor laws. Sometimes they go back and hit some labor laws and things like that. So you might want to be aware of that. Design and control of concrete mixtures. This is fairly self-explanatory. It's all about concrete. It's all about slump. It's all about the mixtures, how much water you use, and so on and so forth. And for marine construction, there is actually something that you add into the mix. It's called tricalcium aluminate between 4 and 10%, which makes your concrete more resistant to seawater. So I imagine that might be on the exam. Okay, then you've got placing rebar. Sure, absolutely. You're going to do a concrete cap on a bulkhead. You're going to need all the rules for rebar, the different sizes, what the concrete cover should be over the rebar. Also, there's 2 ways that you can the corrosion resistance, that you can make your rebar corrosion resistance. One is epoxy and the other is galvanized. I've never seen galvanized rebar, but it's in there. And there's another question about how much you can repair on a epoxy. Say you get your epoxy on the job, some of it's broken, is rubbed off or something like that, and you've got to repair it. It's 1%. You can only repair 1% of epoxy. But so there's just some good questions in there. And I'll be giving you some going over this book page by page as well at some point for you. Design, principles and practice of commercial construction. Everybody's got to know principles and practice of commercial construction. This is a book that talks about cranes. It talks about steel beams. It talks about concrete. It talks about formwork. We talk about pile driving, all sorts of stuff in this one. And this book has got a great index. When I did my general contractor's exam, this was the book I would go to if I did not know what other book to go to. I just didn't know which book to go to because it's got a great index, and you'll be able to find it if you go there. By the way, these books here, these 2 rows right here, are the 2 that are for the marine specialty. So these 9 are the ones for the specialty, and that's probably where 99% of you are, or at least 95%. So you've got the damage prevention guide. Those are all the rules about when you have to call, how long, what you do on a locate. Underwater locates. I'm sure you'll get a question about an underwater locate. It's 10 days. You got to call 10 days ahead of time. Your timber pile book. This is all about, southern yellow pine timbers, and their strength, compressive strength sizes. What a KIP is. By the way, KIP means 1,000 pounds, and it's giving you some little hints here, and all kind of good stuff on these on timber piles. Your dock manual. This is a bunch of stuff, all just kind of good general information about docks. This is stuff that you probably, most of us probably all know, but it's just very good general dock information. This is probably, if I didn't know what book to go to besides the principles and practices, I'd probably go to the dock manual. It's got a pretty decent index too. All right, now we're talking Florida Building Code building. All right, you especially, the marine specialty is the you do have to know the Florida Building Code building. I've got a video which takes you all the way through every single page of this book and tells you exactly what to highlight. I'll probably break it down a little bit and apply it to marine construction specifically at some point. But this is all about building code. I suspect you're going to get a lot of questions about out of chapter 1, which is about permitting. And then you go down to chapter 31, 32, 33. This is all about safeguards during construction, specialty structures, and things like that. So that's where you're going to want to concentrate. But I'll let you know that when I give you when you see the video on the course, which is specifically for Florida Building Code building. Florida Building Code accessibility, same thing. There's going to be some things about docks, the slope of the ramp, and so on and so forth that you can put in, and all of these things. There's actually a section especially for marine docks and marinas that you're going to need to know on the accessibility. Okay. For those of you that are gonna do Florida Building Code residential, this is for the dock builders, just the docks, or you're just gonna do docks and not bulkheads. You got the Florida Building Code residential, very similar to the Florida Building Code building. And I've got a few things in there that I'll point out to you. Now, this one here for dock builders only, but I gotta tell you, I think everybody should get this and look at it. And look at the video that I'll have for you. Department of Army Safe, State Programmatic General Permit. So I was looking at this the other day and I was really surprised at some things that were in here. So I think everybody should look at this. One of the things was about catwalk. I was very surprised in that, in the sample permit that you could not put additional pilings in for the lowered catwalks. You have to do the cantilever for those. I was very surprised. I don't like that very much. They're not as strong. They're not gonna last as long. I think it could be a safety issue, but that's what they say. So I want you to watch that. I want you to look for that. If you have additional information for me, I have been out of the business for about 5 years now. Maybe there's been some additional information. You can always call me, by the way, at 904-755-4111 if you have any questions. Okay, now, so that's the permit. They've got some nice drawings that you can use as your as a guideline too. 403-813 permits issued. This is actually Florida Administrative Code. All right, permits issued at district centers. So the district centers, 5 district centers in Florida. And that's where your permits are issued at the 5 different districts. But there's exceptions, and if you're in this business, you understand. You've probably heard the 1,000 square foot rule. There's actually one that's they don't want to dock more than every 65 feet, and then there's an exception if your lot's less than 65 feet. This is how far apart they want them. And then there's the 500 square foot rule in the outstanding water. So you might want to. I think everybody needs to know this one as well. So these two, even though they're only for the dock license, the dock worker license, they call it. I think you should know this as well. And this boater's guide to federal requirements for recreational boats. We talked about that a minute ago. This is a lot of stuff that's in here. I'm actually going to print this up myself and make sure that there's nothing that I need to brush up on. Fire extinguishers, where your stickers are supposed to be, your life jackets and everything else. This is the kind of stuff that you probably know by heart at this point, but I would think this would be great to just make sure you give it a look over and give it to your homeowners. So now that we've looked at our manuals, I just wanted to kind of go over this one more time. The specialty is 80 questions, 5 hours. All the others are 40 questions, 2 hours. You might say, well, you know what? I might just get a dock welder. I might just get the bulkhead because there's only 40 questions and it's only 2 hours for the exam. But I got to tell you, you got to do the resident, you have to do the business and finance anyway. That's going to be the toughest one for you probably. And so this specialty one here is not going to be that hard if you go through my course. Once again, it tells us everybody's got to do the Walker's OSHA Contractors Manual. For some reason, pile drive. I'll probably won't even worry about these right now because this is where everybody's going to be. That's specialty. You got to do all of these, all of the manuals that we talked about, except for Florida Building Code Residential. That's just the dock worker. The permit one, that's just the dock worker. I recommend everybody look at that one though. Same thing with the Florida statute 813, and then also the boater's guide for recreational boat. Okay, thank you for your business. If you do choose to enroll in the course, my name is Jack Sheffield. I call myself Jack the Exam Guy. I specialize in helping people pass the Florida State Contractors exams. Don't ever let anybody tell you no Jack, because now you do. I want you to feel free to call me anytime at 904-755-4111 for the 411. And what I like to say is remember to give back. When having a marine contractor's license is like a license to print money. You're going to be rolling in it. So remember the little guys, treat your workers good. give some money back to the community, to your church, pick a charity that you feel strongly about. I appreciate your business and good luck out there.